Rain had always been cruel to Kang Min-jae. Not the soft drizzle that painted the streets silver, but the kind that came in furious sheets, thunder growling, lightning clawing at the sky. Every downpour dragged him back to that night, when laughter turned into screaming metal. He was only 10. The Kang family silver sedan cut through the highway, wipers slashing rhythmically. His mother hummed along to the radio while his father teased her off-key notes. Grandma's favorite scarf was wrapped around his small shoulders in the back seat. Then tires screeched. A blinding flash. Impact. When he woke in the hospital, everything smelled of antiseptic and grief. Behind the thin curtain, voices whispered, "Now that they're gone, the company will finally be ours." The little boy froze, eyes wide, unable to move. He peeked through a gap, silhouettes only. Blurry faces. One tall, one short. Laughter. Cold, greedy laughter. He tried to stand, but his leg was in a cast. His throat burned. No one believed him when he said he'd heard the killers. The police called it an accident. The board called it fate. And the heir learned his first cruel lesson. Truth meant nothing without proof. From that night, something broke quietly inside him. The sweet boy who collected paper cranes and shared chocolates with maids was gone. In his place grew the young man soul tabloids loved to hate, the heir who partied through dawn, dated singers, wrecked cars, and smiled like the world owed him gratitude. Prince of Chaos, they called him. Welcome to Munlyt Stories, where Munlyt meets myth. Love timeless tales? Then hit like, subscribe, and join the circle. Every story begins with you. At 26, Kang Min-jae lived in a glass penthouse above Gangnam, floor-to-ceiling windows, vintage whiskey, and a list of forgotten birthdays. The company board begged him to return, but he laughed, claiming business was boring and champagne more honest. Only one person could still reach him, Grandma Kang Soo-min. She was the empire's matriarch, sharp as winter and soft as morning rice cakes. No matter how arrogant he grew, she saw through him, the trembling boy beneath the tailored suits. "My grandson is not lost," she would say. "He's just hiding." But even she worried when he stopped visiting. Paparazzi photos of him at neon-lit clubs replaced family dinners. Every scandal carved another crack into her heart. One evening, she stared at an old photo, Min-jae's small hand in hers, both smiling under umbrellas. The rain outside whispered memories against the glass. That's when she decided, if the world couldn't save him, love would. And perhaps, just perhaps, the right woman could reach him where lectures failed. A plan began to form. Gentle, clever, grandmotherly mischief. Somewhere within Kang Empire's thousands of employees, there must be a spark bright enough to melt her grandson's walls. She smiled faintly to herself. "Maybe," she whispered, "the heir who forgot to feel just needs someone who remembers how." Annabel Okafor believed that joy was the best sales strategy. Not fake smiles or rehearsed greetings, but the kind that came from genuinely loving what you did. And on most days, she truly did. The Kang Empire's flagship department store in Myeongdong was her playground, aisles gleaming, customers bustling, and Annabel bouncing from counter to counter with that contagious energy that could sell frost to a snowman. "Good morning, Team Sparkle!" she chirped, waving her coffee cup as her colleagues groaned good-naturedly. "Annabel, it's too early for that voice," Jinei whined, adjusting her badge. "It's never too early to be fabulous," Annabel declared, striking a mock model pose. Laughter rippled through the section. That morning was supposed to be routine, a product pitch for their new premium ginseng line. She adjusted her blazer, straightened her tag, and began her favorite game, Spot the Curious Customer. A dignified woman in an elegant hanbok wandered through the aisle, examining a gold-labeled box. Her poise screamed old money, but her eyes held curiosity. Annabel didn't recognize her, just another VIP shopper, she assumed. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Annabel sang, stepping forward with her usual sparkle. "You look like someone who appreciates the finer things, so may I introduce you to Seoul's most powerful little root?" The woman blinked, amused. "Powerful little root?" "Yes," Annabel said, holding up the product dramatically. "Our ginseng boosts energy, fights stress, and even helps you tolerate your boss. It's basically therapy in a jar." The woman laughed, genuinely. "And do you take it often?" "Every Monday," Annabel replied proudly. Because it's either this or quitting my job and moving to Jeju Island to raise goats. A few clerks nearby exchanged wide-eyed looks. Annabel, one whispered urgently, tugging her sleeve. But she continued, smiling brightly. You should take 2 bottles, ma'am. One for health, one for dealing with annoying people who think they own the world. The woman's laugh deepened, warm and knowing. I see. And if I tell you I do own part of the world? Annabel froze, blinking. Then, ma'am, I'd give you a discount. Her colleague finally hissed. She's the chairwoman. The chairwoman, Kang Min-jae. The world went quiet for 3 seconds. Then Annabel gasped, nearly dropping the box. You mean the chairwoman? Oh my goodness! I mean, ma'am, you look 25. Who would have guessed? Grandma Kang chuckled. Nice save. Annabel bowed, so fast she almost lost balance. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. Please don't fire me, please. Instead of scolding, the chairwoman smiled softly. You're bold. And honest. That's rare. She handed Annabel her card. Come to the headquarters tomorrow. I have a new assignment for you. Annabel blinked in disbelief. Her team stared, and somewhere in the luxury elevator, Madame Kang Min-jae smiled, the first spark of her plan glimmering to life. Annabel couldn't decide whether she was being promoted, punished, or pranked. When the email from headquarters arrived the next morning, she reread it 3 times. Subject: reassignment, effective immediately. Body: report to the executive office, Kang Empire Tower, by 10 a.m., chairwoman's orders. Her colleagues gawked. Annabel, what did you do? Jin-ae whispered. Sold ginseng with style, she muttered, clutching her bag. And maybe my job too. By 9:55, she stood before the towering glass building that touched the Seoul skyline. The marble floors gleamed like water, and every staff member she passed bowed with mechanical precision. Annabel tried to mimic them, bowing at everything that moved, even the security scanner. At the top floor, the receptionist smiled politely. Miss Okafor, the chairwoman is expecting you. Annabel stepped into the grand office. Sunlight streamed across the massive desk, where Madame Kang Min-jae sat like an empress wrapped in grace. Annabel, she said warmly. Punctual. I like that. Thank you, ma'am. I brought ginseng tea as an apology offering. It's sugar-free and guilt-free. Grandma Kang chuckled. I'm not angry, dear. In fact, I'm impressed. She gestured for Annabel to sit. I need someone young, spirited, and brave enough to tell me the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. My previous assistant retired last week. You start today. Annabel blinked. Today? As in today? Yes, Madame Kang said simply, sipping the tea she'd just been offered. The staff will transfer your things. And just like that, the girl who once sold health supplements became the personal assistant to the most powerful woman in the country. Her first day was a blur of instructions, polite greetings, and barely controlled panic. She accidentally sent a corporate memo with a heart emoji. She called the vice president sir twice before realizing it was a woman. Yet, somehow, everyone still liked her. She had that kind of warmth, chaotic but genuine. That evening, Madame Kang asked her to accompany her home to the family estate in Songbuk-dong. The car glided through the quiet district, past walls draped with ivy and gates that whispered money. When they entered the mansion, Annabel's jaw nearly hit the marble. Crystal chandeliers, koi ponds, and art worth more than her entire department store. Ma'am, do people actually live here or just admire it? She whispered. The old woman laughed. You'll get used to it. My grandson lives in the annex, though calling him present would be generous. Your grandson, Annabel repeated thoughtfully. The one who? Yes, that one. A small, knowing smile touched Madame Kang's lips. You'll meet him soon enough. Annabel didn't know what to expect. A suit-wearing genius? A polite, elegant air? She had no idea that her next assignment involved the same arrogant man who once humiliated her in a club. As night fell over the mansion, the chairwoman looked out her window, heart full of quiet hope. Phase 1 was complete. The storm that would change both their lives was about to begin. Madame Kang Min-jae had survived corporate wars, press scandals, and stubborn executives, but nothing tested her patience quite like her grandson. Kang Min-jae was sprawled across the leather couch of her hospital suite like a man auditioning for a luxury commercial, sunglasses on indoors. "Grandma, you know these hospital gowns clash with your complexion," he said lazily, flipping through his phone. "You could at least get one in beige." "Min-jae," she sighed. "I'm dying and you're discussing fashion?" He peeked at her. "You've been dying since last year. The tabloids are running out of headlines." She coughed dramatically, pressing a hand to her chest. "This time it's serious." The doctor, an old family friend who had clearly been briefed, played along perfectly. "Yes, Chairman Kang's condition is delicate. Her heart can't handle stress. Granting her final wish could help her recover peacefully." Min-jae straightened immediately, alarm cutting through the sarcasm. "Final wish? Don't talk like that." Madame Kang managed a weak smile. "Just one small request before I go." He grasped her hand, guilt flickering in his usually smug expression. "Anything, Hermione. You know I'll do it." She paused for effect, the kind of dramatic silence that could win awards. "Go on a blind date." The Heir blinked. "Come again." "With a girl I chose. Sweet, smart, and normal," she said, her voice faint but firm. "You've spent years wasting your life on parties. Just one date. For me." Min-jae groaned, running a hand through his perfect hair. "Grandma, you're literally weaponizing sympathy." "I'm weaponizing love," she corrected. "Agree to this, and I might just live another year." He stared at her, the only woman in the world who could manipulate him with a heartbeat, and sighed. "Fine. One date. But only because you're my favorite human." She smiled secretly. Step 2 complete. Meanwhile, Annabel was pacing outside the same hospital room, clutching her bag. "Miss Okafor," the doctor said gently, "the chairwoman wants to see you." She rushed in, eyes wide with worry. "Ma'am, you shouldn't be out of bed. Should I call?" Madame Kang waved her off with a frail smile. "My dear Annabel, you've been such a light these past weeks. I have one last wish." "Don't say that," Annabel protested. "You'll live to attend my wedding someday." "That's exactly what I want to talk about," the old woman said softly. "A date. With my grandson." Annabel blinked. "Your grandson?" "The Heir. The one who's always in the news for creative chaos." Madame Kang nodded, pretending to look weak. "He's not as bad as they say. Please, just meet him once. For me." Annabel hesitated, her soft heart warring with her instinct for self-preservation. But when she saw the old woman's hopeful smile, her resistance melted. "Fine, ma'am. Just one date. But if he's rude, I'll throw ginseng tea at him." Madame Kang chuckled behind her oxygen mask. "Deal." That evening, as Seoul's neon lights flickered alive, two very different souls received the same message. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., Blossom Garden Cafe. For Grandma." Neither of them knew that the date would reignite an old embarrassment, a splash of pride, and a spark neither could put out. The Blossom Garden Cafe was famous for its privacy, the kind of place where Seoul's elite sealed deals, whispered secrets, and pretended not to recognize each other. Soft jazz floated through the air, candlelight flickered, and the scent of brewed coffee mixed with perfume worth more than rent. Annabel arrived early. Dressed in a soft peach blouse and neat black skirt, she kept adjusting her earring, muttering under her breath. "Blind date my foot. I should be home watching dramas, not babysitting some chaebol prince." Still, the memory of Madame Kang's weak smile kept her glued to the seat. Across town, Kang Min-jae checked his reflection in the mirror for the 10th time. "Why am I nervous?" he thought. "It's just one dinner for Grandma." He smirked at himself. She'll probably swoon in 2 minutes. When he entered the cafe, heads turned. The Heir of Kang Empire was hard to miss, tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly tailored in navy blue. The hostess guided him to the reserved table. Annabel, lost in her phone, didn't look up until he spoke. "You're early," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Her fingers froze. Her head snapped up. The world stopped. It was him. The man from that club a year ago, the one who'd shattered her birthday mood with one humiliating sentence. Flashback, 1 year earlier. Gangnam's hottest club, flashing lights, her best friend shouting, "Girl, it's your night. Live a little." Annabel had never been one for nightlife, but she'd gone along, dressed in borrowed heels and courage. She'd spotted him at the VIP section, that face from the magazines, flawless under the neon lights. Kang Min-jae, the golden heir, dancing lazily with a glass of champagne. She'd stared too long. Not intentionally. He was ridiculously handsome. Then he'd caught her gaze, sauntered over, and with a half-smile asked, "Like what you see?" She stammered, just curious if perfection has bad angles. People laughed. He leaned closer, his voice smooth and sharp. "Careful, sweetheart. Admiration looks cheap when it drools." The laughter doubled. Her face burned. She'd walked out, heels clicking like thunder, swearing she'd never forget the humiliation. Back to present, Blossom Garden Cafe. Now here he was, the same smirk, the same air of royal arrogance. "You," she said slowly, disbelief dripping from every syllable. "You." He blinked, equally stunned. "Grandma's dying wish was you?" They spoke at once. "This is a joke." "Exactly." The waiter approached, awkward smile in place. "Would you like to order?" "No," they said together. Annabel grabbed her bag. "I only came because your grandmother is an angel." Min-jae leaned back, amused. "And I came because she's dramatic." "Then we're done here." "Gladly." But as she turned to leave, he added softly, "You still stare too long." She froze. "And you still talk too much." She left first, the click of her heels echoing his silence. For the first time in years, Kang Min-jae couldn't brush off a woman's words. Something about her fire unsettled him, like the first crack of thunder before rain. That night, as he sat in his car watching the rain start to fall, he muttered, half annoyed, half curious, "Annabel Okafor. Let's see how long that attitude lasts." For the first time in years, Kang Min-jae voluntarily stepped into the Kang Empire's main office. The elevator doors opened with a quiet chime, releasing him into a world of polished marble, designer suits, and employees who whispered as if a celebrity had entered. He didn't mind. He enjoyed an audience. Madame Kang Soo-min sat in her top-floor office, waiting like a general who had predicted every move. She was surrounded by sunlight, orchids, and the scent of ginseng tea, calm, composed, dangerous. "Grandma," Min-jae began, removing his sunglasses dramatically. "You called me in like an emergency. I thought you were dying again." She sipped her tea, unbothered. "Not dying, just disappointed." "That's worse." He smirked. "You've been disappointed since 2015. What's new?" "What's new," she said, setting her cup down, "is that the board wants you back. And so do I." He walked to the window, glancing at the Seoul skyline. "You know I'm allergic to boardrooms. They smell like old money and bad manners." "And yet they still sign your paychecks," she replied smoothly. "The Empire needs you, Min-jae." He turned to her, feigning thought. "If I say yes, do I get anything fun out of it?" Her eyes narrowed. "You get purpose." Sounds like broccoli." She sighed, about to argue again, when he suddenly straightened, his expression turning sly. "Fine. I'll do it." Her brows lifted. "You will." "On one condition." She waited, knowing that look. It was the same look his grandfather once wore before suggesting something outrageous. Min-jae leaned on her desk, voice low but smug. "Transfer your precious Annabel Okafor to be my personal secretary." Madame Kang blinked, then laughed, the deep, knowing kind. "You remember her?" "How could I forget?" he said, straightening his cufflinks. "She's the only woman who's ever told me I'm insufferable and lived to tell the tale." "You're doing this because you like her," she teased. He scoffed. "Please. I'm doing this because she's infuriating. If I have to suffer, she should too." "So emotional revenge." "Professional synergy," he corrected. Madame Kang smiled behind her teacup. "Deal." That afternoon, Annabel received the transfer email. Subject: Reassignment. Executive Secretary, Office of Kang Min-jae effective immediately. She nearly spilled her coffee. "Wait, his secretary," she gasped. Her colleague Jin-ae peeked over her shoulder. "The Min-jae." The walking headline. Annabel groaned. "The same. And the only thing worse than working for him is explaining to my mother why I quit my job 5 minutes later." But quitting wasn't an option. So she packed her files, squared her shoulders, and muttered, "If arrogance was currency, that man would own heaven." When she entered Min-jae's office the next morning, he was already seated, flipping through documents with a bored expression. "Miss Okafor," he said without looking up. "Glad you could join the winning team." She set her folder down with exaggerated care. "You mean the dramatic team?" He looked up then, that slow, deliberate glance that made her pulse skip before her temper caught up. "You're here to assist me, not insult me." "It's called multitasking," she replied sweetly. He leaned back in his chair, smirk widening. "This will be entertaining." "Or short-lived," she said under her breath. Their eyes met, challenge versus spark. The air between them crackled like static, the kind that could light up a city or burn it down. And somewhere in the building, Madame Kang watched through her office window, smiling to herself. Phase 3 of her master plan had just begun. Annabel arrived at Kang Empire's executive floor with a silent prayer and an extra strong cup of courage disguised as coffee. The mirrored elevator doors opened to reveal an ocean of glass walls, designer suits, and assistants who typed as if the fate of Seoul depended on their keystrokes. "Miss Okafor, this way please." The HR manager's polite smile did little to soothe her nerves. They stopped before a frosted glass door engraved with Kang Min-jae, Executive Vice Chairman. Great. His title already sounded allergic to humility. Inside, the heir sat behind a desk large enough to host a family dinner, scrolling lazily through his tablet. He looked up, one eyebrow arched. "You're late." "It's 8:59, she replied. "Office starts at 9. "I'm punctuality sensitive," he said. "Arriving 1 minute early shows respect." "Then I respect you exactly 60 seconds less than you'd prefer." The room went silent. One intern nearby nearly swallowed his pen. Min-jae leaned back, smirking. "Bold. Let's see how long that lasts." He handed her a stack of files. "Schedule my meetings, filter my calls, and never bring me burnt coffee. I drink only Blue Mountain Blend, medium roast, no sugar." Annabel took the papers, smiled sweetly, and marched out. 10 minutes later, she returned with a mug and her brightest grin. He took a sip and promptly choked. "This isn't Blue Mountain." "No," she said innocently. "It's our department store brand. Locally patriotic and caffeine effective." He narrowed his eyes. "Are you mocking me?" "Sir." His assistant Jean Ho tried to hide his laughter behind a cough. The tension in the room shifted from hostile to entertaining. Throughout the morning their battle continued. She scheduled his board meeting at 8 a.m., knowing he hated mornings. He retaliated by ordering her to rewrite a 30-page report in Korean and English. She countered by decorating his digital calendar with tiny cartoon frogs labeled Ego Check. By lunchtime, the entire executive floor had silently voted them the most chaotic duo since mergers and acquisitions. When Annabel brought in another cup of coffee, this time brewed perfectly, he studied her. "You're not afraid of me?" "Of course I am a little bit." He blinked, caught off guard, and then unexpectedly laughed. The sound was low, rich, almost human. It unsettled her more than his arrogance ever did. That afternoon, a sudden thunderstorm rolled across Seoul. Rain lashed against the windows, lightning cracking above the skyline. Annabel turned toward him. He had gone pale. The pen slipped from his fingers. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. His breathing grew shallow, eyes fixed on the streaks of water racing down the glass. Without thinking, she crossed the room and switched off the lights, dimming the glare. "It's just rain," she murmured. "You're safe." Her voice steadied him. The storm outside softened. Inside, something unspoken shifted. When the thunder finally faded, he exhaled shakily. She smiled gently. "See, even storms end." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're impossible." "Thank you," she said, returning to her desk. "It's part of the job description." That night, Min-jae sat alone in his office, staring at the cooling mug of Blue Mountain coffee she'd finally gotten right. For the first time in years, the rain hadn't terrified him, it had simply fallen. And he couldn't decide if that frightened him more. The Kang Empire's marketing division had always been a hive of noise, the kind that buzzed with ambition, competition, and the constant smell of coffee. But that day, the noise had a new rhythm, laughter. Specifically, Annabel's laughter. Min-jae heard it from his office, sharp and bright, slicing through the glass walls. He tried to ignore it. He really did. But his concentration evaporated faster than his patience. He glanced up through the glass partition and saw her leaning slightly toward Executive Director Han Ji-hoon, tall, charming, and criminally good at grinning. They were discussing presentation slides, but the way Ji-hoon laughed made it look like a date. Min-jae's jaw tightened. He tapped his pen, muttering to himself, "Why is she laughing like that? She doesn't even laugh like that at my jokes." Jin-ho, his assistant, looked up warily. "Sir, you don't tell jokes." "Exactly," Min-jae said. "So what's so funny?" Jin-ho wisely returned to typing. Minutes later, Annabel entered, holding a stack of documents. "Sir, here's the report for the Hanseong proposal." He didn't look up immediately. "You seem happy." She blinked. "Should I apologize for that?" He dropped his pen dramatically. "Depends. Did Director Han cause it?" Her brow furrowed. "Director Han? We were discussing strategy for wait. Are you jealous?" He scoffed. "Jealous? Please. I don't do jealousy. It's a low-budget emotion." "So, possessive professionalism, then," she teased. He looked at her sharply, but she only smiled, the corners of her lips daring him to respond. "Just stay focused," he said, finally turning away. "We have a board presentation tomorrow." "Of course," she said sweetly. "Should I schedule Director Han for that too? He has great ideas." That did it. His pen snapped clean in half. The next day, during the meeting, Min-jae was uncharacteristically sharp. Every time Ji-hoon spoke, he countered. Every time Annabel smiled, he changed the topic. By the third interruption, even the board members were exchanging amused glances. When the presentation ended, Annabel marched into his office, shutting the door behind her. "What was that?" "What was what?" "You turned a strategy meeting into a fencing match." He leaned back unbothered. "I call it leadership. I call it ego. Correction, refined standards." They glared at each other for a beat too long. Her pulse raced, though she'd never admit it. There was something magnetic about the way he argued, infuriatingly composed, yet passionate enough to make the air vibrate. "You know," she said finally, "for someone who claims not to care, you pay an awful lot of attention." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I just like precision. Precision doesn't glare across the office whenever someone talks to me." He looked away. "I don't glare. You're glaring now." "I'm not. R2. Their banter broke into unexpected laughter, quick, sharp, and unplanned. It startled them both. "Fine," he said softly. "Maybe I glare a little. And maybe I enjoy annoying you a little." He tilted his head, half-smile returning. "Careful. You're starting to sound like you like me." "Keep dreaming," she shot back, walking out before he could see her blush. When she was gone, Min-jae exhaled, running a hand through his hair. He'd faced corporate takeovers and ruthless shareholders, but nothing unsettled him quite like Annabel Okafor's laughter, especially when it wasn't meant for him. Outside, the rain began again, soft this time. For the first time, it didn't make him flinch. It simply reminded him that storms weren't always disasters. Sometimes, they were warnings that the heart was waking up again. The day began with thunder and ended with chaos. A late board meeting had drained the life out of Kang Empire's top floor. Annabel stayed behind to finalize the presentation slides while Min-jae reviewed reports, both pretending not to notice how comfortable the silence between them had become. When the clock struck 9, she gathered her files. "I'll take the elevator down and send the final email from my desk." He looked up, the faintest frown forming. "I'll walk you down. The rain's bad." She raised a brow. "Concern? From the great Kang Min-jae." He smirked. "Don't flatter yourself. My grandmother would haunt me if you slipped and sued the company." They entered the private elevator. Mirrored walls, soft lighting, quiet hum. She pressed the ground floor button. Halfway down, the elevator jolted once, twice, then stopped dead. The lights flickered and went out. Annabel froze. "Tell me that was not power outage," he finished calmly, though his knuckles whitened. The faint glow of the emergency light painted their faces gold. She pressed the intercom. "Hello. We're stuck." A static reply came. "Technical issue. Please wait 15 minutes." 15 minutes, she groaned. "With you? My luck is broken." He gave her a look. "You make it sound like I bite." You emotionally bite, she muttered. He chuckled softly until thunder cracked overhead. His body stiffened, his breathing quickened. Hey, she said gently, noticing his fingers tremble. It's just thunder. We're safe. He tried to mask it with sarcasm. I'm fine. Just allergic to enclosed spaces with loud women. Liar, she said, stepping closer. You're scared. His jaw tightened. I don't get scared. Then why are your hands shaking? He exhaled, closing his eyes. Because the last time I heard thunder like this, my parents. The word stopped, swallowed by memory. Annabel's expression softened. You don't have to explain. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of rain filled the small space. Then she smiled faintly. You know, if you pass out, I'm taking your watch's payment. He blinked, startled, then laughed quietly. The tension eased, just a little. You're impossible. Occupational hazard. When the elevator jerked again, she stumbled. He caught her by the waist, the movement instinctive. Their faces were inches apart, breath mingling in the dim light. Her heart hammered. His eyes, usually sharp and proud, softened with something fragile, curiosity, longing. Annabel, he murmured. Yes. Stop talking. It wasn't an order, but a plea. The kind that made the air too thick to breathe. For a heartbeat, time forgot how to move. Then ding. The lights snapped back on. The elevator hummed alive, door sliding open to reveal 2 startled maintenance men. Annabel jumped back, cheeks blazing. Perfect timing, she said too quickly, marching out. Min-jae followed, smirking despite himself. You're blushing. I'm furious. Furious looks cute on you. She glared. I'll add that to my list of workplace harassment quotes. He laughed, a genuine, warm sound that chased away the last of a storm. As they stepped into the empty lobby, the rain outside finally stopped. Annabel turned to him, half smiling. Guess we survived 15 minutes. He met her eyes. Barely. Neither of them realized it yet, but something had changed in that elevator, something deeper than proximity, louder than thunder. For the first time, Kang Min-jae wasn't running from the storm. He'd found someone who made it bearable. Madame Kang Soo-min had always been proud of her acting skills. After all, she'd once faked amnesia just to avoid a board meeting, successfully. But this time, her little drama was beginning to trouble her heart. Every evening, Annabel would visit her hospital suite, bringing flowers and stories from the office. Min-jae often followed quietly, pretending it was for corporate updates, though everyone knew better. That night, the 3 of them sat together, grandmother resting on the bed, Annabel arranging tulips in a vase, and Min-jae pacing with a file he hadn't opened for 15 minutes. Grandma, you should be resting, he said, glancing at her. She smiled softly. I rest better when I see you 2 together. Annabel chuckled. We're your favorite entertainment channel, aren't we? Exactly, Grandma replied. My drama of the year, the arrogant heir and the girl who talks too much. Annabel gasped. Ma'am. Min-jae smirked. Accurate title, though. She glared at him. Keep talking and I'll rename it The Prince of Tantrums. Grandma laughed until she coughed, the kind of fake cough that sent both of them into panic mode. Ma'am, are you okay? Annabel rushed to her side. Min-jae grabbed the doctor's button, panic flickering across his face. Grandma waved them off, milking the moment. I'm fine, my dear. Just tired. But seeing you both argue makes me feel young again. Annabel bit her lip, eyes soft with concern. Please don't scare us like that. The old woman smiled faintly. Then keep visiting. That's my medicine. Min-jae stayed silent, watching them. Something inside him shifted, guilt, affection, confusion. Annabel's genuine care for his grandmother wasn't an act. She talked to her like she was family, not royalty. Later, outside the hospital, the rain had returned, gentle this time, tapping rhythmically on the roof of his car. Annabel stood by the entrance, waiting for a taxi. He pulled up beside her. Get in. It's raining. I can handle drizzle, she said. Consider it repayment. She hesitated, then slipped into the passenger seat. For a while, silence filled the car, soft, almost comfortable. The city lights blurred behind raindrops. You really love her, she said finally. He nodded. She raised me after my parents, after the accident. Annabel glanced at him gently. Then she must have done a good job. You're not as heartless as you pretend. He let out a quiet laugh. Careful. You'll ruin my reputation. Maybe that's what you need. A little bad press for being too human. He looked at her then, eyes catching the passing neon glow, and for once, the usual arrogance wasn't there. Just something raw. Annabel, he said softly, you make chaos sound like peace. She blinked, unsure how to respond. That's oddly poetic for you. He smiled faintly. Don't get used to it. When he dropped her off, she waved lightly. Good night, Mr. Heir. He chuckled. Good night, Miss Sunshine. As she disappeared into the lobby, he lingered in the car, listening to the rain fade into silence. Somewhere between Grandma's laughter and Annabel's smile, his world, once built on noise and luxury, was starting to sound like home again. And in the hospital suite above the city, Madame Kang smiled knowingly, whispering to herself, my performance might end soon because the story's becoming real. Every year, the Kang Empire Gala was the highlight of Seoul's business calendar, a glittering night where power wore perfume and wealth danced under chandeliers. For Annabel, it was her first. For Min-jae, it was his battlefield. The ballroom of the Grand Chosen Hotel gleamed with crystal chandeliers, cameras flashing as Seoul's elite swept in, all smiles and silent rivalries. The theme was legacy in motion, though everyone knew it really meant who wore it better. Annabel stood by the entrance, adjusting her red dress. Elegant, modest, but breathtaking in its simplicity. She got it from a stylist friend who insisted, if they don't remember your work, they'll remember your glow. And glow she did. When she entered the hall, heads turned. Conversations paused. Even the live orchestra seemed to slow its tempo for a second. Min-jae, across the room surrounded by executives, caught sight of her and forgot his next sentence. His assistant Jinho whispered, Sir, you were saying something about profit margins? He blinked. Profit who? Annabel spotted him seconds later, dressed in a sharp black tuxedo, hair slicked back just enough to make arrogance look like art. Their eyes met across the hall, one amused, one unprepared. Miss Okafor. Director Han Ji-hoon waved her over, smiling brightly. She returned the smile and joined him by the buffet, where they exchanged work jokes and light teasing about presentation slides. It was innocent, but not to Min-jae's eyes. He watched, arms folded, jaw tight. Each laugh she gave Ji-hoon felt like a personal insult. She's networking, Jinho murmured. She's flirting, Min-jae corrected under his breath. Same difference. Unable to resist, he crossed the floor. His presence shifted the room, conversations dipped, cameras subtly turned. Director Han, he said smoothly, extending a hand. Thank you for entertaining my employee. Annabel raised an eyebrow. Your employee? He ignored her, turning to Ji-hoon with a polite but dangerous smile. You've done enough mingling. Go enjoy the buffet before it disappears. Ji-hoon chuckled nervously and excused himself. Annabel stared at Min-jae. You just dismissed my conversation partner like a security guard. He was boring. He was being kind. Same difference. She folded her arms. Are you jealous again? Of him? He scoffed. Please. I don't get jealous. Then why are you glaring at his reflection on the dessert spoon? He blinked, caught. That's quality control. She laughed, soft and genuine, and something in him melted. The room seemed quieter, the lights softer. Fine, she teased. You're not jealous. You just have territorial vision. He smirked. And you talk too much for someone who's stealing all the attention. Stealing? Yes, he said quietly. I can't seem to focus on anything else. The orchestra shifted to a slow melody. Without warning, he offered his hand. Dance with me, he said. She hesitated. At work functions, I prefer 2 steps away from scandal. Then let's cause one worth remembering. She stared at him, half in disbelief, half in something deeper, then placed her hand in his. Under the chandeliers, they moved in slow circles. No arrogance, no sass, just rhythm, warmth, and the strange realization that they fit far too well for an accident. From her corner, Madame Kang watched with misty eyes and whispered to her doctor, Looks like my cure is working better than expected. The gala ended with applause and camera flashes, But Kang Min-jae left early, claiming exhaustion, hiding confusion. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Annabel smile under the chandeliers. Every laugh, every glance, every heartbeat that didn't belong to business. He drove home through Seoul's neon haze, loosened his tie, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. It didn't help. Nothing did. So he poured another. By midnight, the proud heir was sitting on the marble floor of his penthouse, hair slightly messy, phone in hand, arguing with his own reflection in the black screen. "You're not thinking about her," he muttered. The reflection smirked back. "You're absolutely thinking about her." When the doorbell rang, he almost ignored it, until the security guard's voice came through the intercom. "Sir, Miss Okafor is here. She said you left your cufflinks in the ballroom." Min-jae blinked. "Send her up." A few minutes later, Annabel stepped into the apartment, still in her red dress, holding the forgotten cufflinks. "Wow," she said softly, scanning the panoramic view. "You live in a glass museum." He shrugged, half smiling. "Easier to admire myself from every angle." Then she noticed the half-empty bottle. "Are you drunk?" "Just generously inspired." "You missed the after-party dinner." "I wasn't hungry." "Liar. You're always hungry for attention." He laughed, the kind of loose, unguarded laugh that made her chest tighten unexpectedly. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the couch. "I promise not to bite." "Promises from you sound like warning labels," she said, but sat anyway. He stared at her for a long moment, eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "You looked beautiful tonight," he said quietly. "Not that you don't usually look tolerable." She snorted. "Thank you. Your royal arrogance." He leaned closer. "Do you have any idea how many people stared at you?" "I nearly fired half the board for staring." "Jealousy again." "Observation," he murmured. "Precise observation." For once, the teasing faded into silence. The air between them grew heavy, intimate, alive. "You confuse me, Annabel," he admitted, voice low. "I built this wall after my parents died. You walk in with that smile and the wall just cracks." She swallowed hard. "Min-jae," he smiled faintly. "Don't say my name like that. It makes it worse." Her heartbeat stuttered. He smelled like rain and whiskey, dangerous combination. "Maybe you should sleep," she whispered. He nodded, leaning back. "Maybe I should forget I said any of this." "Maybe you won't." He looked up, eyes glinting. "You're right." "About what?" "You really are impossible to ignore." Before she could answer, he was already half asleep, head resting against the couch, breathing calm. The proud heir looked disarmingly peaceful, like the boy he used to be. Annabel sighed, covering him with a throw blanket. "You're lucky you're handsome," she muttered, smiling. "Otherwise I'd pour that whiskey on your head." She placed the cufflinks on the table, hesitated for a heartbeat, then whispered, "Good night, Kang Min-jae." As she left, the city lights spilled over him like soft rain. He stirred, murmuring her name in his sleep, and somewhere far below the glass tower, Seoul hummed quietly, unaware that its most arrogant heir had just confessed his heart for the first time, even if he wouldn't remember all the words tomorrow. The next morning began with gray skies and tension thick enough to slice. Annabel arrived at the office early, partly to avoid gossip, mostly to avoid him. The entire building was buzzing with post-gala chatter, photos, compliments, whispered rumors about the chemistry between the heir and his secretary. She rolled her eyes, muttering, "One dance and suddenly the internet wants to swallow me." At precisely 9, the door to Min-jae's office opened. He looked frustratingly perfect, crisp white shirt, calm expression, no trace of last night's drunken honesty. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning," she replied, trying to sound equally casual. No mention of whiskey, no mention of confessions, just silence, until he added, "Thank you for the cufflinks, and for not recording my emotional breakdown." She smiled faintly. "Tempting as it was, I prefer blackmail with better lighting." He chuckled, rubbing his neck. "Let's pretend I was only drunk." "Fine by me," she said, though her heart whispered otherwise. By afternoon, dark clouds gathered over Seoul, swallowing the city's color. Thunder rolled softly at first, then louder, angrier. The rain came sudden and heavy, slamming against the tall windows of the executive floor. Annabel was in the break room when she heard it, A crash, a gasp, the sound of something falling in Min-jae's office. She rushed in and found him standing rigid by the window, pale and trembling, his glass shattered on the floor. Min-jae! He didn't move. His eyes were locked on the rain, breath uneven. It sounds the same, he whispered. The night they died, it sounded exactly like this. Annabel's heart clenched. She stepped carefully over the glass and reached for him. Hey, she said softly. Look at me. He didn't. His chest rose fast, panic clawing through composure. I can't breathe. Without thinking, she wrapped her arms around him, grounding him in the warmth of her body. Then don't look out there, she murmured. Look here. Right here. He froze. Her voice, calm, steady, real, cut through the storm in his head. Slowly, he blinked and focused on her eyes. You're safe, she whispered again. That's not your past anymore. That's just weather. The thunder rolled again, but this time he didn't flinch. He clung to her instead, quietly, tightly, as though afraid she might disappear. Minutes passed. The storm softened. His breathing steadied. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. I haven't stood near a window during rain in 16 years. She smiled gently. Then we'll start small, one drop at a time. He looked down at her, rain reflected in his eyes. You always fix things you didn't break. It's a terrible habit, she said softly. But you're worth the effort. Silence again, but this time, it was the kind that hummed with understanding. He lifted his hand, brushing a stray curl from her face. Annabel, she stepped back slightly, heartbeat racing. Don't thank me. Just learn to live again. He smiled faintly. You make that sound easy. It's not, she said, but it's possible. That evening, when the rain finally stopped, Min-jae walked her to her car without an umbrella. They stood there, drenched but laughing, two survivors of different storms. As lightning flickered one last time over the city, he said quietly, You're the only good thing rain ever brought me. And though she didn't reply, the look in her eyes said everything his heart had waited 16 years to hear. The week after the rain felt different. Kang Min-jae no longer flinched at thunder. He still frowned too much and worked too little, but something in him had softened, like winter thawing without permission. Annabel noticed it quietly. He smiled more. He asked questions that weren't just orders. Sometimes, when she laughed, he looked at her as though laughter was a language he was finally learning. Everything seemed almost normal, until the email arrived. Annabel was in the records room, sorting old marketing files, when she stumbled on a box labeled Vehicle Incident, 2009. Her curiosity pricked immediately. 2009, the year of the Kang family accident. She hesitated. This wasn't her department. But something urged her on. Inside were insurance documents, maintenance reports, and one small flash drive taped to the lid. No label, just dust and silence. Her heart pounded as she plugged it into her laptop. The screen flickered to life with a single video file, dated a week before the crash. A security recording. The family driver stood in a dim garage, speaking to someone just out of frame. A voice replied, cold, commanding, and unmistakably familiar. Ensure the brakes fail, but make it look natural. No survivors. The Empire needs new leadership. Annabel froze. That voice. She'd heard it in board meetings, polite and polished, wrapped in false charm. Kang Dae-sung, Min-jae's uncle. Her pulse raced. She watched again, praying she was wrong. But the evidence was undeniable. The accident hadn't been an accident. It had been a takeover. She exhaled shakily, eyes burning. Oh, Min-jae! That evening, she found him in his office, sleeves rolled, tie loose, leaning over blueprints for a new product line. He looked peaceful for once, until he saw her face. Annabel, what's wrong? She hesitated. I found something. You need to see this. He frowned, taking the laptop. The moment the voice played, his expression shifted, shock first, then disbelief, then a storm she'd never seen before. He slammed the laptop shut, jaw tight. Where did you get this? In the archives. I didn't mean to. You shouldn't have opened it. I had to, she snapped. You deserve the truth, Min-jae. His anger cracked into pain. You think I haven't imagined this? That I didn't suspect him? He raised me after that night, and now you're telling me He's the reason I don't have a family. Annabel stepped forward, tears in her eyes. I'm telling you because you're not alone anymore. You can fight back. He turned away, breathing hard, fists trembling. If I confront him, Grandma, she'll break. He's her only brother. Then let's find a way that protects her, Annabel said softly. But don't bury this. Don't bury yourself again. He looked at her, truly looked, and the weight of 16 years collapsed into that moment. Why do you care so much? He asked quietly. Because I've seen what you look like when you finally breathe, she said. And I don't want you to stop. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he reached for her hand, hesitant, trembling. Stay with me, he murmured. Whatever happens next. She nodded, gripping his hand firmly. Always. Outside, rain began again, not angry this time, but cleansing. In that quiet stormlight, Min-jae swore silently. This time he would not hide. The truth had found him, and with Annabel by his side, he was finally ready to face it. By dawn the next day, Kang Min-jae's penthouse had turned into a war room. Laptops glowed across the glass table, coffee steamed beside open files, and Annabel sat cross-legged on the rug, typing furiously. Operation Uncle Down, she said, tapping keys. Catchy enough. Min-jae looked up from his notes. We're dismantling a criminal empire, not naming a K-pop tour. Same principles, she said. Drama, choreography, and a grand finale. He almost smiled. Almost. For 16 years, he carried guilt like a chain. Now rage and relief battled in his chest. But Annabel's presence steadied him, her calm confidence wrapping around his chaos. They spent hours crafting a plan. The flash drive evidence alone wouldn't survive in court without authentication. They needed Dae-sung to expose himself publicly. Every villain eventually wants applause, Annabel said. We just give him a stage. 2 nights later, the stage appeared, a private shareholders' dinner at the Sky Lounge, the one event the press always found a way to crash. Madame Kang, still unaware of the truth, insisted both her grandson and her brother attend. Family must stand together, she said lovingly. Min-jae's jaw clenched at the irony. Yes, Halmini. Together. Annabel arrived disguised as a public relations liaison, a sleek black dress, and an earpiece completing the illusion. Beneath the calm facade, her pulse raced. The small mic hidden in her pearl necklace streamed live audio to a private cloud server. Across the room, Dae-sung was in his element, charming investors, flashing that smooth politician smile. Our company's legacy is built on loyalty, he proclaimed. Min-jae muttered, and break failure. Annabel elbowed him lightly. Focus, Prince of Sarcasm. When the dinner reached its midpoint, Min-jae rose, tapping his glass. I have a toast to family. The crowd cheered politely. He continued, voice steady. 16 years ago, my parents died in what the world called an accident. But family secrets don't stay buried forever. A murmur rippled through the room. Dae-sung's smile faltered. Min-jae gestured to the projector. A forgotten security file surfaced last week. For transparency, let's watch together. The lights dimmed. The same video Annabel had found flickered onto the massive screen. The driver, the order, the voice. Dae-sung's. Gasps echoed. Photographers, ever hungry, captured everything. When the clip ended, silence swallowed the hall. Dae-sung's mask cracked. Fury replaced finesse. You dare humiliate me, boy? Boy! Min-jae stepped closer, calm now. No. Heir. Security guards surged forward. Dae-sung swung at his nephew, only for Annabel to step between them, voice sharp through her earpiece. Broadcast live. Every network. Within seconds, the recording hit social media. Police entered minutes later, summoned by prearranged calls. Dae-sung was cuffed mid-protest, shouting about forged evidence. Madame Kang stood frozen, trembling as truth dawned. You killed my daughter, she whispered, collapsing into Min-jae's arms. He held her tightly, tears finally falling. It's over, Halmini. He can't hurt anyone again. Hours later, outside the flashing lights of a Sky Lounge, Annabel leaned against the balcony rail, exhausted. The city stretched below, alive, endless. Min-jae joined her, sleeves rolled, tie gone, eyes softer than moonlight. You were brilliant in there, he said quietly. You were brave, she replied. We make a decent team. He nodded. The best kind, chaos and calm. She smiled. Then what now? He took her hand gently. Now we stop surviving and start living. For the first time, he meant it. Below them, Seoul shimmered, not as a battlefield, but as a beginning. The news broke before sunrise. Every major station in Seoul ran the same headline. Kang Empire Scandal. Chairman's brother arrested for 16-year conspiracy. The story spread like wildfire, fueled by shock and disbelief. The once untouchable Kang Dae-sung was seen in handcuffs, his perfect composure shattered. Outside the Kang residence, reporters swarmed like bees, their cameras flashing relentlessly. For years, the family had been a symbol of power. Now they were the city's headline tragedy. Inside the mansion, silence ruled. Madame Kang sat by the window, wrapped in a shawl, eyes distant as morning light filtered through the curtains. Min-jae stood a few steps away, struggling to find the right words. He had fought for this truth for years, yet victory felt hollow. How Miani, he began softly. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She turned slowly, her face lined with sadness but not regret. You did what I should have done long ago. He shook his head. You couldn't have known. I suspected, she whispered. But suspicion is easy to bury when the heart refuses to believe family capable of evil. Annabel, standing nearby, gently poured tea for her. Ma'am, your health. I'm fine, dear, the old woman said with a weak smile. Though I do wish I'd chosen a simpler family business. Like flower farming. That earned a soft laugh from both Annabel and Min-jae. For the first time in days, warmth returned to the room. By afternoon, Min-jae faced the board of directors. The atmosphere was tense, investors whispering, eyes shifting between him and the empty chair that once belonged to his uncle. He stood tall, no trace of the arrogant playboy they once mocked. 16 years ago, he said, voice steady, this company was nearly destroyed by greed hiding under loyalty. That ends today. Murmurs rippled. I won't let Kang Empire be remembered for scandal. It will stand for truth and second chances. He paused, eyes flicking to Annabel through the glass wall outside, waiting with quiet confidence. We rebuild together. When he stepped out, she was there. You were incredible, she said softly. He smirked. You mean terrifying? Maybe a little, she admitted, smiling. But the good kind. He exhaled, tension finally leaving his shoulders. I think I'm done pretending. The parties, the rebellion, it was all a distraction. She nodded. Pain makes us hide in strange ways. He looked at her then, really looked. The woman who'd walked through every storm beside him, armed with wit, kindness, and courage. I used to think love was weakness, he confessed. Turns out, it's the only reason I made it here. Her eyes softened. And here I thought ginseng tea was your cure. He laughed, the first real laugh in days. You're impossible. Consistently so. Later that night, he visited the detention center. Through the glass wall, Dae-sung sneered. Enjoy your empire, boy. Power always comes with blood. Min-jae stared back calm. Then I'll build mine with forgiveness instead. When he left, he didn't look back. Outside, rain began again, soft, cleansing, almost merciful. Annabel waited by the car, umbrella in hand. He walked toward her, letting the drops hit his face. No umbrella today, she teased. He smiled faintly. I don't need one anymore. She stepped closer, tilting the umbrella slightly over both of them. Still, she whispered, it suits you better when you're not drenched. He looked down at her, eyes warm, steady. You're starting to sound like someone who plans to keep me dry forever. Maybe I am, she said softly, and as they stood there beneath the gentle rain, the city lights flickering around them, the heir who once feared storms finally learned how to stand in them, unbroken, unafraid, and no longer alone. The storm had finally passed, both outside and inside the Kang family. A week after the arrest, the mansion felt strangely peaceful. Reporters had drifted away, the boardroom drama had quieted, and for the first time in years, the Kang household smelled of homemade soup instead of scandal. Annabel arrived that morning with groceries and sunshine as usual. Good morning, Madame Kang. I come bearing vitamins and unsolicited cheer. The old woman looked up from her chair, eyes sparkling. You and your vitamins have saved me more times than medicine, child. Min-jae stood behind her, carrying a tray of tea. You could have just called for the staff, Grandma. And deprive myself of watching you pour tea like a nervous butler? Never. Annabel stifled a laugh. He's improving, ma'am. Today he only spilled once. Min-jae glared playfully. Remind me to remove sarcasm from your job description. Madame Kang smiled, sipping the tea. Her cheeks looked rosier, her eyes brighter. The fake illness she'd used to manipulate fate had vanished, but guilt lingered behind her smile. Children, she began softly, there's something I must confess before my conscience leaks it out on its own. Annabel tilted her head. Confess? Ma'am, you didn't commit any crimes recently, did you? The old woman chuckled. Only emotional blackmail. Min-jae frowned. What do you mean? She set her cup down, sighing. The illness. It was never fatal. I may have exaggerated. Silence. Then Annabel blinked. You mean, I lied, Madame Kang said quickly. To bring you two together. It worked, but my acting career is officially over. Annabel's jaw dropped, half shocked, half amused. You tricked us into a blind date? I prefer the term divine intervention, dear. Min-jae stared, torn between disbelief and laughter. You faked dying just to get me married? I wasn't dying, she corrected primly. Just emotionally persuasive. For a moment, the room filled with awkward silence. Then Annabel started laughing, softly at first, then louder until even Min-jae joined in. You're unbelievable, he said, shaking his head. Madame Kang smiled mischievously. And you're finally happy. I'd say my methods were efficient. Later that afternoon, they sat together in the garden. Spring sunlight spilled across the koi pond, and birds filled the air with sound. Madame Kang reached for her grandson's hand. I'm proud of you, Min-jae. You didn't let revenge turn you cruel. He squeezed her fingers gently. You taught me better than that. And Annabel, she continued, turning to her with affection. Thank you for bringing laughter back into this house. Annabel blushed. It's easy to laugh when your boss behaves like a drama character. Min-jae feigned offense. Excuse me, I'm the responsible heir now. Responsible? Annabel teased. You just tried to feed the fish with imported truffle crumbs. It's called fine dining, he retorted. Madame Kang chuckled, so hard she almost spilled her tea again. As the afternoon softened into gold, the old woman stood slowly, leaning on her cane. You know, she said, smiling at both of them, I think my heart is healing faster than expected. Love is the best medicine. Min-jae looked at Annabel and nodded quietly. You might be right. Annabel's eyes met his, laughter fading into something gentler, deeper. Madame Kang caught the look and grinned. Ah, young love, better than any stock market rise. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll let you two handle my next wish, a wedding invitation before I actually do need a doctor. Annabel gasped. Already? Legacy waits for no one, Madame Kang declared, marching inside like a general. When she was gone, Min-jae turned to Annabel, smiling. She's impossible. Runs in the family, she said softly. The garden shimmered in late sunlight, laughter echoing like music. A family reborn, stitched back together by love, truth, and one mischievous grandmother who refused to give up on either. If someone had told Annabel Okafor a year ago that the arrogant heir she once wanted to strangle would one day be her favorite person, she would have laughed loudly. Yet here she was, standing in front of the Kang Empire Tower, watching Kang Min-jae act suspiciously weird. He called her that morning with a casual, clear your evening. Wear something you like. Not too professional. Or too distracting. Actually, forget I said that. She'd rolled her eyes so hard it hurt. You're terrible at instructions. Good, he'd replied. It means you'll be surprised. Now, hours later, she was following his personal driver up to the rooftop garden of the Kang Tower. The city glittered below, soul alive in 1,000 lights. Fairy lights draped over the hedges, candles lined the path, and soft jazz floated through the cool night air. Annabel blinked. What is all this? Min-jae appeared from behind a row of lanterns, hands in his pockets, trying and failing to look casual. Corporate meeting. Very emotional one. Really? She teased. Does the board know you replaced PowerPoint with candles? They'll live. He offered his arm. "Walk with me, Miss Sunshine." She hesitated, smiling despite herself, then slipped her hand into his. They walked in silence for a while, the city stretching endlessly beneath them. "You've changed," she said softly. "No more nightclubs. No more scandals. Just this." He smirked. "I still have a few bad habits left, like breathing when you smile." She gave him a playful shove. That was so cheesy it curdled the air. "Then maybe I should say it differently." He stopped beside a small table covered in flowers. In the center sat a single white ginseng root in a crystal jar, its label reading, "The root of all miracles." She blinked. "Please tell me you're not proposing with a vitamin." He grinned. "Technically, it's symbolic." "Symbolic of what?" "Long life." "Of us," he said. "It started with ginseng, remember?" Her laughter faded as he took her hands. His voice dropped, softer now. "You walked into my grandmother's store, sold her a product, and somehow sold me back my life. You made me laugh again. You made me care. You made me remember that storm's end." Her breath caught. "Min-jae." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. The diamond inside wasn't huge, but it glimmered like a drop of starlight. "I used to think love was a distraction," he said. "But you became the reason I started paying attention." "So, Annabel Okafor," he took a deep breath, "will you marry the man who once mocked you for staring too long but now can't stop looking at you?" Annabel laughed through tears. "You rehearsed that, didn't you?" "Absolutely. In the mirror. Twice." "Good," she whispered, taking his face in her hands. "Because my answer's yes." He froze for a heartbeat, then broke into the brightest smile she'd ever seen. The rooftop lights seemed to pulse with the city as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Grandma Kang's voice suddenly echoed from a nearby speaker. "Did she say yes yet?" "I'm watching through the security cameras." Annabel gasped. "She's what?" Min-jae laughed, wrapping an arm around her. "She planned half of this. Honestly, I'm lucky she didn't bring the press." "Give her a week," Annabel murmured, smiling through happy tears. As fireworks burst quietly above the skyline, Min-jae kissed her forehead. "You're my chaos," he whispered. "And you're my peace," she replied. "Together. Always." The city lights shimmered around them, soul alive, the empire healed, love victorious. The Kang residence hadn't been this lively in decades. White flowers spilled across the garden terraces, fairy lights sparkled like tiny stars, and laughter echoed through the courtyard. Seoul's elite mingled with familiar faces from the company, employees, friends, even reporters, all gathered to witness the impossible story come full circle. The once arrogant heir of Kang Empire was getting married to his grandmother's favorite employee. Annabel stood in front of the mirror inside the bridal suite, her golden brown skin glowing under soft lights. Her gown was elegant, lace and silk wrapped around her like a whisper, her sleek bun adorned with a single white blossom. She smiled nervously at her reflection. "I look calm," she said to herself, which is concerning. Her best friend, Jean A., now her maid of honor, grinned. "Girl, calm? You've been humming love songs for an hour. You're officially gone." Annabel laughed. "Maybe a little." Downstairs, Min-jae paced like a man awaiting a merger announcement. Jin-ho, his best man, sighed. "It's your wedding, not a board meeting." Min-jae straightened his tie anyway. "Same thing. High stakes. No room for error." "Relax," Jin-ho said. "You already won." She said yes. Twice. "You're lucky she didn't change her mind after you used ginseng for a proposal." Min-jae rolled his eyes. "It was symbolic. Symbolic of weirdness," Jin-ho muttered. Then the music began, a soft instrumental that turned every head. Annabel appeared at the garden's entrance, sunlight glinting off her gown, each step graceful, deliberate, breathtaking. Min-jae's world stopped. Every thought, every sound faded until there was only her. When she reached him, he whispered, "You're late." She smiled. "I had to make sure you were nervous first." The guests chuckled softly. Madame Kang dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief, whispering to her doctor, "He finally looks like his grandfather did at our wedding, completely undone." The ceremony was simple but perfect. No grand declarations, just honesty. "I spent years pretending to be a man who didn't care," Min-jae said, his voice steady. "You taught me that caring isn't weakness, its strength. Annabel's eyes glistened. And you taught me that storms don't last forever, but love can. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, cheers erupted. Even Grandma Kang stood to applaud. About time, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I was starting to plan a second fake illness. The reception was laughter and warmth. Cupcakes replaced the traditional cake. Afrobeat blended seamlessly with soft Korean ballads, and Grandma danced like she gained 20 years of youth. At one table, Jin-ae filmed everything on her phone. For historical purposes, she told Annabel. In case your kids ever doubt you had rhythm. Annabel laughed, tossing a flower petal at her. Across the dance floor, Min-jae spun his grandmother gently. Happy? He asked. Ecstatic, she said. Your parents would have been proud. You turned pain into purpose. He smiled softly. Thanks to you and her. When the band slowed to the final song, Annabel walked back to him, barefoot now, her laughter soft. He pulled her close, whispering against her temple. You still think I'm arrogant? She smirked. Unquestionably. But now you're my arrogant husband. He laughed, holding her tighter. Fair trade. As fireworks bloomed above the Seoul skyline, they kissed. Not as two opposites, but as two halves of a whole that had finally found peace. Madame Kang raised her glass, smiling proudly. To love that heals, to laughter that lasts, and a family that refuses to give up. 3 years later, Seoul woke to a bright spring morning, the kind where the sky looked freshly washed and every cherry blossom whispered stories of love. Inside the Kang residence, laughter echoed again. It came from the backyard, where a tiny boy in a bucket hat chased a puppy across the grass, shouting, Appa! Appa! He stole my cookie! Kang Min-jae, now 30 and surprisingly domestic, lowered his newspaper with a grin. He gets that drama from your side, he called out. Annabel, barefoot and radiant in a flowy home dress, scooped up the giggling toddler. Nonsense. He inherited your taste for trouble and cookies. Their son, Jimin, squealed happily, crumbs decorating his cheeks. The puppy barked triumphantly, tail wagging like a metronome of chaos. From the patio, Grandma Kang watched with amusement, wrapped in a soft shawl. I prayed for peace, she muttered. God sent me sitcom reruns instead. Annabel placed Jimin on her lap. He's only 2, ma'am. You can't expect peace yet. I don't expect it, Grandma said, smiling. But I'm glad it's noisy for the right reasons again. The Kang Empire had changed too. Under Min-jae's leadership and Annabel's quiet brilliance as head of corporate communications, the company had become known not just for luxury, but for integrity. Employees called them the heartbeat duo because he made bold decisions, and she made everyone believe in them. During interviews, journalists always asked how they managed both love and leadership. Min-jae's answer never changed. Simple. She argues with me at home, and I agree with her at work. Annabel would roll her eyes every time he said it, but the sparkle in her gaze always betrayed pride. That afternoon, they all gathered under the cherry tree in the garden for a small family picnic. Annabel lay on the blanket, Jimin napping beside her, while Min-jae plucked petals from a branch above. Remember when you called me the Prince of Tantrums? He asked. She chuckled. I still stand by it. Rude, he said, tossing a blossom at her. Accurate, she countered. But you've grown, Min-jae. You're gentler now. Kinder. He smiled softly. You made that easy. She reached up, brushing a stray petal from his hair. Do you ever miss the chaos? Only when the board meetings get too peaceful, he said. But then Jimin throws his food and I'm cured. They both laughed quietly, content in the simplicity of it all. A few steps away, Grandma Kang dozed off in her chair, sunlight painting her silver hair gold. The family's laughter drifted around her like a lullaby. As the day mellowed into evening, Min-jae lifted Jimin into his arms and looked out over the horizon. I used to think rain was my enemy, he said softly. Annabel leaned into him. And now I think it was just a rehearsal for sunshine. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. So poetic, Mr. CEO. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation. I think your reputation's safe, she teased. You're the heir who finally learned how to rule. He turned to her, eyes warm. Not rule, he corrected gently. Lead. With you. A light drizzle began, gentle, cleansing, almost symbolic. Instead of running for cover, they stood still, letting the raindrops kiss their faces. Jimin giggled, reaching for the sky. Annabel laughed through the rain. He loves it. So do I, Min-jae whispered, pulling her close. Finally, as twilight settled over Seoul, the Kang garden glowed softly. 3 generations, 1 empire, and a love story that had conquered grief, arrogance, and time itself. Madame Kang stirred awake, smiling at the sight. See, she whispered to the heavens. The storm ended just fine, and somewhere between laughter and raindrops, the once lost Heir and the woman who healed him sealed there forever, not with grand speeches, but with quiet joy, shared hearts, and a promise that no storm would ever steal their peace again.